So if you watched my earlier iOS video, and you should, my mom said she liked it, I told you that at the time there wasn't a way to test the app-to-app flow in Sandbox. That is the flow where you go from like your native app to a bank's native app so the user can log in using something like Face ID and then back to your app. At the time, you could really only test this in production against a real bank like Chase, which meant getting production access, going through the whole OAuth bank approval process, and also having a real account at Chase, which is an awful lot just to, test something. Luckily, that's all changed, and now there's a way you can test this flow in Sandbox, and I'll show you how in today's quick tip. So for this video, I'm assuming you already have your own iOS application that's already integrated with Plaid. That is, you're able to create a link token, open link, and go through the whole access token creation process. I'm going to be using the app that we created during the iOS video tutorial. You probably have your own real app that you're using, and that's fine. And if you don't have one yet, maybe go ahead and watch that full iOS tutorial that's probably linked below before doing this one. So the first thing you're going to need to do is update your LinkKit SDK, that's Plaid's library to run the link widget, to version 5.1.0 or later. Now, if you're looking at that version number and thinking, oh crap, this is like a major version change, is this going to break my app? Chances are no. The main breaking changes with version 5 are 1, we drop support for iOS 13 and earlier. 2, we remove support for public key authentication, which was deprecated back in like 2020. And 3, we also remove support for some continue from methods that you might have added to your scene delegate, which were needed in rare instances. And I'll talk about these a bit later since those are somewhat relevant to our interests. So I'm going to go ahead and update the version of my library in Xcode to be 5.1.0 or later. Xcode will think about this for a little bit, and then I can rebuild and run my code. And in my case, everything runs just fine because I'm not calling any of those formerly deprecated methods. If you are getting errors, chances are it's because you're running one of these deprecated continue from methods like this one in one of your scene or app delegates. Just go ahead and comment out anything that might be Plaid related because you don't need it anymore. Next up, make sure your application really does support universal links. 9 times out of 10, when people are having trouble with the app-to-app flow, it has nothing to do with Plaid per se. It has to do with their app not properly supporting universal links, which, admittedly can be kind of finicky. Now, the best way to test this is to have your simulator running, then in a terminal window, use the xcrun command. I'm going to type xcrun simctl open URL booted, and then in my case, I'll enter this URL here under kerp.net, this, Plaid video/redirect. If I have universal links running properly, this should open up in my app, and it does. Now, if this fails for any reason, important things to check are, does this app and URL appear in your website's Apple App Site Association file? Do you see it in Apple's cache over at cdn-apple.com? And is this domain included in your associated domains in your Xcode project? And again, I go into all of this in much more detail in the full video tutorial, so feel free to check that out if anything I said here seems confusing. Assuming your native app does open up okay, the next thing to do is make sure you're configuring a redirect URL when setting up a link token on your server. Now, this can be any URL you want as long as it is one of those universal links that opens up your app. Personally, I might recommend having it point to some kind of please open up our app to continue kind of page on the web, just in case the universal link craps out for some reason. But, it shouldn't matter too much. The main point here is just to make sure you're pointing to a page that tells iOS to open up your native app. Then make sure this URL is properly registered in the Plaid dashboard, and make sure you're including it in your link token create configuration object. And remember, these URLs need to match up exactly. If they're off at all, you'll get an error when you try to create that link token. Okay, assuming all that is working, it's time to actually test this in Sandbox. And to do this, I'm going to run my application again and ask to connect to a bank. But this time I'm going to search for app to app. That's with the number 2 there in the middle. I'll select Platypus Bank here, and then select Platypus Bank OAuth app to app as the bank I want to connect to. Now, this process looks similar to most of our other fake OAuth flows, but you'll notice that instead of opening up my bank in a pop overview like every other test OAuth bank, it's actually opening up Safari, a completely separate app. Then once I go through the entire OAuth process, and maybe we'll speed this up here, you can see that it goes back to my native application where link finishes up. And just like that, I have successfully tested an app-to-app integration. Again, if you are seeing problems here, make sure universal links is working and that you've created the link token configuration object on the server with the right redirect URL. That can actually be a pretty common problem while testing, particularly if you, the iOS engineer, aren't fully in control of the server that you're testing against. Now, those of you who are used to handling universal links might be asking yourself like, hey, shouldn't I be doing anything with this incoming URL in my scene delegate or something? And the answer here is no. See, when your user completes their OAuth flow with their bank, Plaid makes a note of that on their servers before returning your user to your app. So here in my client app, all Link needs to do is pull Plaid servers to see if the user has completed the OAuth process. So there are no incoming URL arguments or anything you'd need to handle, and that's basically why we got rid of those deprecated methods. The whole thing's a little more secure, and it's less work for you, so it's pretty much a win-win. And there you go. All you need to know about testing the app-to-app flow on Sandbox on iOS. Hope this was helpful, and do you have an idea for your own quick tip? Maybe let me know in the comments, and I can make an episode about it. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.